When people think American tank, they tend to have one or two things spring to mind. It's either the modern Abrams or it's the Sherman. Most likely it's the Sherman. What they don't think about is this, one of the best little tanks ever made, the Stuart. Welcome back to 5 Minute History, the weekly series where Patreon members choose the topic. The Stuart tank, officially designated as the light tank M3 because everything is an M in the US military, was one of the most recognisable and widely used American-built light tanks of World War II. Its name came from the Confederate General Stuart. The tank emerged from the United States' efforts to modernise its armoured forces during the late 30s, and at the time the American tank doctrine still emphasised mobility and reconnaissance over direct confrontation. Early US tanks such as the M2 were fast, but they lacked sufficient armour and firepower, and lessons learned from the Spanish Civil War and also the opening phases of the Second World War, particularly the Polish campaign, revealed the need for better designs in the coming war, either for American forces directly or for their allies. In 1940, with war looming, the Ordnance Department began development of a new light tank based on the M2 chassis, but with some significant upgrades. From this development spawned the M3, which entered production in March 1941. The big differences were in armour and the fact that the turret, sporting a 37mm gun, could actually fully rotate. The Stuart would also follow the very American approach of more dakka when it came to secondary guns too, because this little tank that could carry up to 5 30-caliber Browning machine guns. The front of the Stuart is really the last place you want to be as an infantryman. Initially the M3 used a riveted hull, but this was later replaced with a welded design in the M3A1 to increase durability and safety. Later variants on the tanks such as the M5 and the M5A1 incorporated a redesigned hull and different twin Cadillac V8 engines with automatic transmissions, improving the tank's performance and making maintenance even easier, which is impressive in a tank that already had easy maintenance. Given that this is a short video, I'm going to just include some other stats on screen to give you an idea on what this little tank could do. Well, at least the most common version of the tank. Of course there were multiple different kinds. Now, despite its light armour and by mid-war standards small gun, the Stuart was well regarded for its speed, mechanical reliability and manoeuvrability, which made it ideal for reconnaissance and support roles. This tank would especially shine in the Pacific and throughout North Africa, where its adversaries would at times, particularly in the case of the Pacific, be completely outclassed. The Stuart would first see action in the service of British forces in North Africa during Operation Crusader in 1941. It quickly earned a reputation for mobility and ease of use, but it also became evident that the 37mm main gun was largely inadequate against better armoured larger German Panzer IIIs, and of course other vehicles. British crews would actually be so impressed with this little tank that they would dub it the Honey, for its smooth ride and mechanical reliability. When the US finally joined the war following the attack on Pearl Harbor, the tank's production ratcheted up again, seeing service during Operation Torch and on the continent. In Europe, however, as German armour continued to improve, the Stuart's main gun became nearly obsolete for tank-on-tank engagements, especially against the big cats. The tank would be relegated to non-frontline roles such as reconnaissance and infantry support, away from the extremely hot zones. It would be in the Pacific though where the Stuart would excel. In the Pacific theatre, the Stuart remained viable throughout the entire war, as Japanese tanks were generally lighter and more poorly armoured than their German counterparts. But that was not necessarily a bad thing on the part of the Japanese tanks, as the dense jungle terrain favoured smaller and lighter armoured vehicles. A big tank like the Panther, for example, would be completely out of place and suffer in the muddy quagmires of Borneo or Cape Gloucester. The Stuart, though, with its compact size and mobility, came into its own in these conditions in campaigns such as Guadalcanal, Saipan and Burma. Stuart tanks provided vital infantry support and firepower against Japanese positions. It wasn't all smooth sailing though, because the Stuart first saw action with the US forces in the Philippines back in 1941, but its impact was limited due to it being outmatched by Japanese anti-tank weapons and anti-tank tactics, along with some mechanical issues under the extreme tropical conditions. But as the war progressed and tactics improved, and the teething issues were ironed out, the Stuart found more success in those later campaigns, and the campaign to retake the Philippines in 1944 and 45 saw Stuart tanks at their absolute best. Its small size and agility allowing it to manoeuvre through dense jungles and narrow trails where larger tanks like Shermans could simply not operate. The effectiveness of this little tank made all the difference, saving countless Allied lives. The Stuart tank was not just the one tank though, as it underwent numerous modifications through its production run. Some of these include the M3, M3A1, M5 and M5A1, just to name a couple. In addition to these standard versions, you've got specialised derivatives that include command tanks, flamethrower tanks, these are called crocodiles, self-propelled guns, and recovery vehicles. There was also a couple employed as infantry carriers able to move men quickly around the battlefield with machine gun support. I've actually been lucky enough to sit on one during a tank parade at the Cairns Tank Museum. Multiple Allied nations, including Britain, Canada, and the Soviet Union via Lend-Lease and Free French forces, operated the Stuart, and post-war it continued to serve in dozens of countries around the world. Although the production of the tank actually ceased in 1944, more than 25,000 Stuarts had actually been built, and this led to an abundance of spare parts, giving the Stuart a surprisingly long post-war career. And this has led to its cameo in multiple conflicts such as the Chinese Civil War, the Arab-Israeli Wars, Indo-Pakistani conflicts, Korean War to a limited extent, the Portuguese colonial wars, and even the Vietnam War by French and South Vietnamese forces. Some countries like Brazil and Paraguay actually kept their Stuarts in reserve or in ceremonial service well into the 90s. The Stuart tank may not have the brute strength of a German Big Cat or the firepower of an Easy 8 or a Firefly, but it was a key asset for the Allies during a critical phase of the Second World War. It was fast, it was dependable, and versatile, and its insanely long career is a testament to how great this little tank was. For the Marines in the Pacific, it was a godsend, and this little tank, to this day, remains one of the best tanks the Allies produced, and yet so often, it remains completely underappreciated.